Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news and rumor video to discuss. We got some signings to talk about from the past couple of days. The Oilers have the new GM. It's a really interesting hire with that as well. Plus, we got some trade rumors involving Metro Division teams such as the Penguins, the Flyers, the Islanders, and the Blue Jackets. So we'll go to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to this video here at the Edmonton Hockey Channel. Before we get into it, don't forget to like this video, subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. We're able to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and leave a comment down in the comment section below. So it's going to listen to this video. Now, we have a lot of signings to get to over the past couple of days. We haven't done a video in quite some time. So there's all the signings since July 23rd. So first, there was a small signing. The Islanders extended Dennis Cholowski. Cholowski was a depth defenseman this past year. Played mostly in the AHL affiliates for the New York Islanders. He gets a one-year league on deal. Should remain as an AHL player, could be a call-up option, so pretty good move there by the Islanders to keep Cholowski around. Then we saw our first arbitration case that actually went to arbitration this year, and that was Spencer Stastney. Stastney was a defenseman with Nashville Predators. Wound up going to arbitration. He wanted a one-way deal with the Nashville Predators. Predators wanted a two-way deal, so the arbitrator was able to get them a compromise. He gives them a 2-year deal with AV of $825,000, so it's pretty good. The first year is going to be a two-way deal, so if the Preds really need to, they are really tight up against the cap right now. They could move him down to the minors, pay him a lower salary in the AHL, and then next year is a one-way deal. So he'll be able to get the same salary at the NHL and AHL level next year. So it's a pretty good compromise there. He gets $825,000. Interesting to see that that's the guy who's gone to arbitration so far, but interesting note there. And Stastney is now signed for 2 years at $825, so pretty good stuff there for the Predators. Then we saw the Sharks sign one of their young defensemen, and Henry Thrun. He was an RFA 2, gets a 2-year deal with the AV of $1 million. Pretty good deal there for the Sharks. Thrun looks like a pretty good defenseman, so that's another RFA off the board for the Sharks. Then we saw another player who would file for salary arbitration get settled before going to arbitration. That was UPL. Pekka Luukkonen, who did file for salary arbitration, settles before he gets to arbitration, gets a 5-year extension in Buffalo with an AV of $4.75 million. That's a pretty good deal in my opinion for Buffalo. Pekka Luukkonen showed this year he can't be the starter. I'm not sure if he'll play his contract completely out in Buffalo, given the fact Levi's still in the system and looks to be the future starter for that team. But if they could even have like Luukkonen and Levi be like a tandem, like maybe the new Swayman and Allmark, that could be a really good pickup there for the Sabres. I mean, if they are able to have Levi be like the 1A, Luukkonen be the 1B in like 2 or 3 years, that could be a really good tandem in my opinion. So it's a pretty good solid sign there, and it's not too much money for Pekka Luukkonen, so pretty good move there for the Sabres. The Sharks then also signed another one of their RFAs in Thomas Bordeleau. Bordeleau gets a 1-year deal with AV of $874,000, which is around his qualifying offer, so pretty good pickup there for the Sharks. Bordeleau, I think, should be a solid third-line center this year at the NHL level for the Sharks, so pretty good solid sign there for San Jose. Then we saw a couple of ELCs. 2024 second-round pick Carter George, who was one of the best goaltenders in this year's draft class, who wound up being taken by the LA Kings, signed his ELC. It's a 3-year deal with AV of $875,000. Pretty good deal in my opinion for the Kings. George, I think, eventually could be a solid star there in LA, especially with the Kings not having the greatest of goaltending situations, so pretty good solid sign there for the Kings. And then we also saw Brayden Yager, who was the 14th overall pick in last year's draft, so 2023 draft, sign his ELC in Pittsburgh. He has a 3-year ELC with AV of $950,000. So pretty good deal in my opinion for the Penguins to get Yager on his new deal, so solid sign there for the Penguins to get Yager. Then we saw another guy who was headed for salary arbitration wind up not going to arbitration. That was Oliver Wahlstrom, New York Islanders. They settled before they come into arbitration. He gets a 1-year, $1 million deal, so good to see Wahlstrom get his new deal. He should still be a solid bomb 6'4", but we'll get to him in a couple of minutes. So that's a pretty good pickup there for the Islanders. Then we saw a massive extension. The Philadelphia Flyers extended Travis Konecny. There was a lot of talk about him being extended. The Flyers wanted to pay him $8 million. He wanted around $10 million was the sort of reports we were hearing. He ends up getting an 8-year extension with AV of $8.75 million. So it might be a little bit of an overpayment for the Flyers. I mean, I think Konecny at this point would probably be worth like a $7.5 million player. So I definitely think it's a little bit of an overpayment, but Konecny is a really good player, can put up 60, 70 points consistently. It's sort of the typical Flyer player, and the Flyers really do like him, so to see him get extended is really good, and that's another one of the top UFAs off the board for next year, so interesting stuff there. And then the Winnipeg Jets on there are facing Simone Lundmark. Lundmark gets a 1-year league on deal, should be AHL player, potential call-up option there for the Jets, so interesting signings there from our past couple of days. And at this point in time, we have 3 arbitration hearings left after the 14 players file for arbitration. One of them has indeed gone, and Stastney, so we have 3 left. I'm pretty sure one was on the 31st, one was on August 2nd, one was on August 4th. If I'm correct, I might be wrong about this, but I think Marchenko was on the 31st with Columbus, Nate was on the 2nd with Carolina, and Lindgren was on the 4th with the Rangers, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And with all those guys who did get arbitration dates, they do have small buyout windows opening in the not-too-distant future, so the Islanders could have a shot to buy out guys like Lee or Pajot. Sabres do have a buyout window, but I highly doubt they use it, so interesting stuff there. Remember, that's the arbitration and signing updates from the past couple of days. Going over to a quick news update here, the Edmonton Oilers have hired their new GM, and it's a controversial hire in hiring Stan Bowman. Now, Bowman has been out of the NHL for quite some time now, a couple of years, after being let go of his tenure in Chicago and being basically banished from the NHL due to the roles that he played, as well as guys like Joel Quenneville and a couple of other guys in the Cal Beach scandals. So he had been out of the NHL for quite some time. He had recently been reinstated into the NHL by Gary Bettman, so it's a little bit of a surprise in my opinion. I mean, after the whole Cal Beach thing, I think he would have maybe taken a little more time off, maybe taken a little more time before he gets into an NHL role, and I thought it's very likely that maybe in the next year or two he got maybe like an advisory role or like an assistant GM job. I think it's quite possible he could have gone that, maybe worked himself back up, show that he's changed, but to get right into a GM position is a little bit weird in my opinion. I know Bowman was the Hawks GM for quite some time, helped them win a couple of Stanley Cups, so I know that's a really good thing on his resume, but still, I think there were a lot of other qualified candidates for the Oilers GM position. I'm just thinking this might be a little bit too early. In my opinion, I do believe that you can have second chances, I do believe you can change, so I'm not saying that this is a horrible opportunity for Stan Bowman, but I do think that it might have been a little bit too soon. I think if they maybe waited a year or two for Bowman, then maybe he could have been the GM, but I think this might just be a little bit too soon. But Bowman is going to be the new GM of the Edmonton Oilers. Some people also say that he isn't an overly great GM. He's a little bit overrated given the fact that he was handed that team in Chicago that wound up going to the Cup Finals in the early 2010s, and that most of that team, the huge core of that team, Bowman didn't construct, so we'll have to wait and see exactly how he does. I mean, we'll see if he can keep this Oilers team as a Cup contender. I highly doubt the Oilers get back to the Cup final. I know a lot of people think that they will, but I'm of the mind that the Oilers probably don't get back to the Cup final, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there, but it's going to be interesting to note there that Stan Bowman is now the new GM of the Edmonton Oilers. Like I said, it's not a horrible hire. Bowman's not a fantastic GM, but he is a pretty good one. He did help the Hawks win a couple of Stanley Cups. He did wind up making that team really good. There are definitely some questionable moves as GM for the Chicago Blackhawks with Stan Bowman, so I'm not saying he's a fantastic GM, but he's a pretty good GM. He has a really good resume. I just think it was a little bit too soon to hire a guy like Stan Bowman. I thought probably wait a year or two, have him work his way from like smaller roles in like advisory positions or assistant GMs and work his way up back to the GM position. But still, interesting note there, apparently he has contacted Cal Beach before, and it seems like he has sort of changed his ways and worked his way back up. So good to see him changing his ways, working his way back, getting a second chance. So good to see that stuff. I just think it might be a little bit too soon for Bowman. But interesting note there, the Oilers' new head coach will indeed be Stan Bowman, who is the former GM of the Chicago Blackhawks. So interesting stuff there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors from our past couple of days. So first, we're going to talk about the two Pennsylvania teams in Pittsburgh and Philly. They've both been linked depending on RFA forwards. So we'll start with the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's been some recent talk from our past, obviously from a couple of resources, saying that the Penguins may have some interest in bringing in Nick Robertson. Now, we talked about Robertson going back to Dallas a little while ago. We talked about him going to a couple other places, but it sounds like Robertson wants to trade. He's still a pending RFA, if I'm correct. The Leafs still have not signed him, so it seems like he really wants a fresh start. Leafs aren't overly open to potentially moving on from him. It sounds like they definitely would try and want to keep him, but they may still try and move on from him, so it'll be interesting to see about that. But still, Robertson's a really good player, really good bottom six forward. Kyle Dubas, who's the GM of the Penguins, has lots of ties to Toronto, being their former GM, so he could definitely really improve their bottom six. And a guy like Nick Robertson, he's a younger player, so it'll be interesting to see exactly what sort of thing happens there. Not saying it's to guarantee Robertson gets traded at this point, even though he has to ask for a trade, and not saying it's to guarantee the Penguins are a team who's acquiring him, but definitely this team like the Penguins has some interest. He's sort of the guy who really fits what they're trying to add, younger players who can really help their bottom six, and I think that could be really good there for the Penguins if they were to add it. I'm not sure what the Leafs would want in return. Would they want one of the Penguins roster players? Would they want one of their younger players in the AHL system who are in cheaper contracts? Would they want picks? Would they want prospects? Not exactly sure what the Leafs would want for Robertson. He was a former second-round pick, so it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there, but it does seem like Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins do have some interest in trying to bring in Nick Robertson from the Toronto Maple Leafs, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to the Philadelphia Flyers, the Pennsylvania rivals of the Pittsburgh Penguins, they've been linked to an RFA too, and that is Columbus Blue Jackets RFA with arb rights, Kirill Marchenko. Now, I just talked about how Marchenko has an arbitration date for the not too distant future, but recently Jonathan Bailey of Philly Hockey Now has linked Marchenko to the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, I know the Jackets seem to be undervaluing Marchenko a little bit. It doesn't seem like they want to give him the sort of contract he wants. Marchenko was the best goal scorer on the Blue Jackets last year. Seems like he has the future of potentially being a 30 to 40 goal scorer, so I think they would definitely like to keep him. If this hits arbitration, it's probably going to be a 1 to 2 year deal at around $3 to $4 million, so I'm not sure if the Jackets will be willing to do that, if they're still trying to work out a contract extension. But if things get really ugly and they don't really want to still go to arbitration, could they potentially move him? I think it's possible. I think it's highly unlikely. I think they'll try and settle it, or at the very least go to arbitration, but I highly doubt they'd try and move Marchenko. But if they were to, I feel like it might be a really good landing spot. They have some cap space with Ryan Ellis on long-term injury reserve, so that could be a really good option there. They could potentially pay him like $2.5 to $3.5 million to be a solid top 9 forward there. Now, I'm not sure what the Jackets would want. They may want like a second-round pick and a really good prospect if they were to try and move Marchenko. That could be a really good pickup there for the Jackets if they were to. However, Marchenko's still a really good goal scorer, so like I said, I highly doubt Marchenko gets moved, but Philly does have 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks for this upcoming draft, so they could put together a really good package. They also have some pretty good prospects, so I think they could put together a really good package that could intrigue the Jackets if it were to get the Marchenko. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there, but it does seem the Flyers do maybe have some interest in adding a guy like Kirill Marchenko, and even though he's scheduled for arbitration, he might be a guy we have to watch out for in Philadelphia if they were to try and add him, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going on to the Islanders. According to Ethan Sears of the New York Post, he says that the Islanders are still very likely to move on from Oliver Wahlstrom. Now, we just talked about how Wahlstrom signed a 1 year, $1 million deal, avoiding arbitration, which was fantastic, but there's still a lot of people out there who think that Wahlstrom is probably not going to make this Islanders roster this year. He's still not looked overly good. Some people even think that his $1 million is a little bit of an overpayment after the season he had last year. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there, but according to Ethan Sears, he says he would still be quite surprised if Wahlstrom made the roster. So I think there's a couple of ways this could go. If he goes into training camp and he absolutely surprises a lot of people and looks fantastic, maybe he earns a spot in the top 9. It's quite possible. The more likely scenario is if he's not dealt at that point and they go through training camp, he might be a player who ends up going on waivers. It's a possibility. I think it's rather unlikely, but I think it's a possibility you could see him go on waivers. His full $1 million cap hit can be buried in the minors, so it would make some sense. On top of that, there have even been some talks about them trying to get him a fresh start as long as it works for them, so I do wonder what they're sort of looking for an Oliver Wahlstrom trade, but it does seem like the Wahlstrom will be still not on that team come the start of the season, and it seems like Wahlstrom will be dealt at some point. So even though Wahlstrom signed his 1 year, $1 million deal and avoided arbitration, don't expect him to make the roster with the Islanders, and whether it be potentially via waivers at the training camp or potentially via a trade at some point, expect Wahlstrom to still be moved on from by the New York Islanders. And lastly, going over to Columbus Blue Jackets. For the Blue Jackets, we've been talking about them a long over past a while, talking about Patrick Laine. We're going to talk about Laine again, but this could be the beginning of the end for Laine in Columbus. And that is because Laine has officially been cleared from the NHL Players Assistance Program. This has basically been what has been holding up a trade. It seems like a lot of teams had some interest in him. It seemed like the Jackets were willing to move on from him, but no one could really talk to Laine until he was out of the Players Assistance Program. He is now, according to Elliot Friedman, officially out of the Players Assistance Program. So that's really good news for him, not only for his health, which is fantastic, but also for teams trying to acquire him, who they can now talk to him about. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there, but that could be a really good boost there for a potential trade to heat up. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there. So there's already been a ton of speculation as to the trade talk picking up around Laine, and we could see a trade in the not too distant future, potentially even at some point this week. So it'll be interesting to see. We have to figure out how much the Jackets are willing to retain. Are they willing to retain 50% of his contract for the next 2 seasons, or are they trying to maybe retain just a little bit less than that? 2, what sort of a return return are the Jackets looking for? I've seen some people say they are trying to target the same sort of return Kuznetsov got on the deadline last year, which was a third-round pick. I've seen some people say it could be a little bit more than that, maybe a second-round pick, maybe a second-round pick plus. So that's another thing that's going to be interesting to see exactly what the asking price is for Laine, and there seems to be a lot of teams interested. We talked about Seattle in the past. We talked about Minnesota in the past. We talked about how those two teams have been heavily linked to a guy like Patrik Laine. I did mock trades around Seattle as well as the Islanders and the Utah franchise, who I think could also benefit from a guy like Patrik Laine in their top 6. Other teams besides those 4 who seem to be linked to Laine right now. One is the Caps, who's come out over the past little while and seems like they have some interest. Could definitely use another top 6 goal scorer. I've seen some people say the Habs. The fans are still waiting for that big splash that a lot of people were expecting to happen in the draft. Laine could be an interesting piece there. They'd have the pieces to pull off a Laine trade. The Carolina Hurricanes, they could use another top 6 forward. They now have a little more cap space after the Kuznetsov termination, so they could be a lining spot for him. I've seen some people say some other teams too, but those are sort of the teams that I've seen linked to him a lot. Seattle, Minnesota, Islanders, Utah, Carolina, Washington, Montreal. So lots of interesting names, probably more that are going to be linked to Laine over the next little while. We'll probably get a Laine trade hopefully in the not too distant future, with Laine now being officially out of the players' assistance program. So interesting stuff there, but that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. Where do you think Laine could go? Do we see a trade at some point this week? And if so, what sort of a return could the Jackets get for Patrik Laine? Do you see the Islanders moving on from Oliver Wahlstrom? What do you think they could get for him? And where do you think he would be the best fit for if he was to move on? So what do you think about that? Do you see Marchenko going to Philadelphia or Robertson going to Pittsburgh? Is it possible either of those two guys could be dealt to the Pennsylvania teams? And if so, what sort of return could the Jackets or the Leafs get for those guys? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, what do you think about Bowman now being the new GM of the Edmonton Oilers and the signings from our past couple of days? Definitely love to get your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk about for today. Until this video, if you like to subscribe down below. Thank you for the support we're able to without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. So it's going to discuss in today's video. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So if you check that out, I'll leave links down in the description below. And I can't see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.